welcome back to another installment of the StartWell podcast. I think we're up to number 42 or something like that. You lose track at my age of numbers or something. This time around, I'm in studio with the one and only co-founder,
CEO.
There you go, CEO. So that's why I knew he was of high importance to the organization. Eric from the Future of Film Showcase, FoFs.
FoFs. That acronym hasn't been around for a long time, by the way. Like that was only, I think that started, like I was in my kitchen once, like years ago, and we were like talking about it, and my brother just like randomly, he's like, so it's like FoFs. It's like, does anybody call it that? I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Why would you say? No, it's Future Film Showcase. Why would you say FoFs? And then like somebody else said it in a meeting, like literally a few days later, and I was like, do you think that's cool? And they're like, yeah, I think it's cool. I'm like, I think maybe we should do that.
So it's stuck. FoFs.
So it's stuck. FoFs just stuck. But my brother's listening to this. You definitely take credit.
There you go.
It's definitely yours, but
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure. It's funny because I guess we'll bring our audience up to speed a little bit on how we met and what FoFs is all about this year and stuff like that. But color the picture a little bit about kind of like the history. Let's start with that. Let's start with what is the history of FoFs? How did you co-found it? Who are your co-founders? What was the like intention to get this thing going?
For sure. It's a very interesting origin story. It's like a friend and I, his name is Sean Joshi. He is now the president of Faye Pictures that runs out of Los Angeles. They celebrate queer content, and their slogan is to decolonize Hollywood. And so that's what he's doing now. But him and I were in the York University film production program for about 4 years, and in our first year, we're sitting in his dorm room watching audition tapes for the very first film that he produced. And so we're watching these tapes, and I just go like, where are we showing this film when it's finished? He's like, oh, we'll probably post it to YouTube or Vimeo. And no offense to anybody who does that. That's great. You're publishing your films online.
This will be on YouTube.
Great. Yeah. No. And that's completely fine. But
I'm not going to win awards for this interview unless you bring the fire, my friend.
But so that's what he said he wanted to do. But I was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But how would you want it? Like, what about showing it in front of people, like showing it in a theater or having some sort of like live in-person screening for it? Because this was, it was the first film that he, I think they had self-funded, and we were getting actors outside of school, and it was like a legit, our first like sort of legit production. And,
right.
And he's like, well, what are we going to do? Just have like a 15-minute event for one film? And I was like, well, let's just screen a bunch of films. Like, let's screen a whole, so let's just screen a whole bunch of films. So we went around the residents of Winters College, and we're knocking on people's doors, like knowing they were in films. Like, hey, do you have a film? They're like, who are you? It's like, it doesn't matter. Do you got a film? Do you want to show it in a theater? We're collecting films. And we got almost 30 films.
This was when? What year was this?
This was 2014.
2014. So about 8 years ago.
Yeah. So we're on the precipice of our 10th festival.
Nice.
Next year, which is kind of insane. We were like knocking on doors. We gathered all these films. They were films from filmmakers at York, at formerly known as Ryerson, Humber.
Yeah. What's Ryerson called now?
At Toronto Metropolitan University, which I think they're going to get confused with like the University of Toronto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like University of Toronto, and then Toronto Metropolitan. Kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of similar.
Yeah.
So we got films from schools across the country. We screened them so I worked at the AMC Theater in Vaughan, went to my GM, and I'm like, how would you feel about giving us a theater? And he's like, yeah, sure. And I had this whole pitch planned. I planned like a
you did the
brochure.
work.
I did the work, and he's just like, yeah, no worries. A week before the event, he calls me, and this is how I find out we got the theater. He calls me and he goes, hey, so I got some bad news. I'm like, oh shit, is it the screening? He's like, no, you're fine. We're just shutting down 5 days after your screening. So he's like
the whole cinema was going to go bankrupt. The whole cinema
was going to be gutted. Yeah. So I worked on that very last day. I remember as soon as the clock struck 8, like all the managers, everyone came out and just like completely tore the place apart. Wow. It was like, I still have that image in my mind. It's really, really fascinating. But anyway, so they were shutting down. So he gave us everything. He didn't care. He gave us the theater. He gave us, people were buying concessions. It was a whole thing. Mm-hmm. But after that, we went to a bar and with only the intention of having it be that 1 year. We showed the film. That's it. We did our thing.
Right.
And one guy, and it's funny, I reconnected with him like for the first time in December since that day. At the Whistler Film Festival, but that's another story. So we were sitting at the bar and we were underage at this bar, just like in the same plaza, and we're like drinking. And he's like, "How do you guys have drinks? Also, are you going to do this again next year?" And we're like, "No, like this is no, like what are you talking about?" And he's like, "I think you should." He's like, "I think you have."
Sorry, was there a name for this festival that first year?
We had called it the Future of Film Festival, or like the Showcase of Future, like something like.
Future was in there somehow.
The Future was in there somehow, but our logo was a spiral like paint. It was like this red paint that was just like in a spiral. I don't think anybody has seen that logo aside from people on it.
Can't Google it.
Don't Google it because maybe it might pop up somewhere in the dark web. No, I've tried. I've tried deleting every.
It's now the logo for your illegal arms dealership.
Don't search it. Don't. No, it's fine. Yeah, because we just put something together quickly, and so he was like, "You should do this again next year." But he's like, actually curate a program, or we didn't go into too much detail, but. The next year, we ended up opening up submissions on Film Freeway. I think submissions were free. Okay. So we got like over 1,000 submissions from around. Well, it was free. There
fascinating.
There was no barriers.
No, but still, it's like that much content from creators coming out of school, right? For the most part.
Yes, because it was
first-time filmmakers,
30 and younger. Yeah. So we had filmmakers like internationally, everybody submitting. We're like, oh my God, we gotta somehow streamline this. And we're like, you know what, we should just make this Canadian.
Yeah.
We should just make this Canadian filmmakers and do it that way. And people weren't paying the submission fee anyway, so they weren't really losing anything by not getting in. So we could sort of make that adjustment as we were collecting. And so we had Canadian Festival, or Canadian Filmmakers, 30 and younger. We did it at the Fox Theatre in Toronto. We got about 3/4 of the theater sold out. I think tickets were like $5 each. And that was really just to help, break even on the theater rental.
Right.
But even still, we ended up putting in a lot of our own money because we printed posters, we printed tickets, we we didn't get any shirts or anything at the time, but the venue rental cost what it did. Mm-hmm. And the former owner of that theater was just like, you guys should do this again. And it's almost like everybody at the end of that year was like, you
don't know what you're doing.
Right. And so
'cause you're doing a good thing.
The year after that, because I worked at a Cineplex at the time, and I just sort of thought, I'm like, what if we brought this to Cineplex? What if we pitched them? And me working at Cineplex had absolutely nothing to do with that partnership, but like I was able to at least ask them about it. And they're like, yeah, my GM was like, yeah, sure, let me give you this guy's contact. Yeah, good luck getting in touch with him. And we got in touch with the VP, like the senior VP, and I think like the marketing director. And we just sort of sat down in Cineplex's head office. They have like their own food court for the employees.
Okay.
They have like their own popcorn and their own like it's any food you see at a Cineplex theater, but like elevated.
Oh wow.
It was great.
Like real butter.
Like real butter. And so we go into this place.
The water's free.
The water and sparkling water is free too.
Ooh, I know. That's like StartWell.
Exactly. So we sat in front of these two guys. We pitched the festival. And we had a whole proposal, again, pitch, PowerPoint, the whole thing. They're just like saying, like, yeah, like, all right, let's do it. And we're just like, seriously? They're like, yeah, let's do it. But they gave us the Canada Square Theatre, Yonge and Eglinton.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know. So that theater,
I know that one.
Yeah. So that theater was like, they sort of gave that to us as like a starter pack. Like, let's see how much you can bring in.
But they do that with a few different film festivals, right? Like
I
feel like I went to a South Asian film festival there once
at Canada Square.
Yeah.
So it's since I believe it because they use that theater. The way that theater stayed open was because they had film festivals coming in and a lot of event rentals. So that's, they gave us that theater. But then the third year kind of flopped. It was like just over 100 people, maybe a little less than that.
In terms of attendees or?
In terms of attendance, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So we had we showcased 10 filmmakers. Films were great. We had, I remember at the time, I can't remember for the life of me how we found this critic, but this critic came in and she was like, yeah, the whole festival experience is about like 3 stars, like 3. You guys could do a little better. You could like expand a little bit more. And then she left and we kind of were like, oh, well, maybe this is like, but then filmmakers were coming up to us. They're like, my film in a theater was incredible.
Right.
My film in front of this community was incredible. Some people had, and I forgot to mention, like in our second year, we had a 14-year-old girl play her film at the festival.
Wow.
It was a 1-minute film about time travel using Toronto's transit system. And the film was incredible. Her first time ever screening, she's the washroom. Dad came up to me in tears, like, you've made her dream come true. This is the first time she screened anything outside of our house anywhere. And so constantly filmmakers were coming up to us like, this is great. This is great. You should keep doing this. Even the guy that approached us in the bar in the first year was a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. So when we had this critic come to us and she was like, it was kind of okay. Attendance was okay. We sort of got we were like a little, defeated and we were
emotional, a little tear in the eye.
Yeah.
Because it was like, we're just doing this for love. Why are you hating?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah. And so we went back to Cineplex and we said, these were our numbers. This was the attendance. And they're like, what? You guys were you're at the Cineplex. Yeah. Canada Square, Yonge and Eglinton. You know what? Let's give you the Scotiabank next year. I think and we're just like, the Scotiabank. Like,
so for people outside of Toronto that are listening or watching, what's the relevance in the geography? Explain why that is a different thing.
Yeah, so Yonge and Eglinton is more uptown. It's a little outside of the city. Canada Square was located directly across from the Cineplex Yonge and Eglinton, which is more the mainstream theater.
Right.
And so bringing us to Canada Square was sort of an experiment. Then Scotiabank is the most populated theater in the entire province, at least, and one of the most popular theaters or within Canada for Cineplex. Yeah,
like for anyone who's never been there, it's kind of I guess now you would say it's very similar to a suburban brand new like multiplex theater in terms of the show value when you walk in. It's like big.
They have premieres there. They have Canadian premieres for huge films like the Matrix movies, some of the Fast and Furious movies, like all of the big Hollywood films that ever have had Toronto premieres have had it at Scotiabank. Mm-hmm. And so this jump to Scotiabank was very, very unexpected. Like I couldn't imagine, and they sort of laughed it off. They're like, well, that's why you got 100 people because we're at Canada Square. You go to Scotiabank, it's more popular. You're gonna have more people there. We go to Scotiabank the next year. We sell out.
Wow, what's selling out?
200 seat auditorium.
Okay.
4th year.
Wow.
The 5th year they upgrade us to I think about 250, between 250 and 300. We sell out. 6th year, they upgrade us to a near 400 seat theater. We sell out. And we're just right. And things are just as naturally are just rising. Like we're now selling tickets. We're gathering more sponsors. We're no longer putting our own money into the thing. And I remember that in our 4th year, we were on the walkie and Nicole at the time, she was, because the way it was is like our first year started as like a 3-person festival. It was me, Shant, and another guy, Christoph. Then in our second year, it was like 4 or 5. And then in our third, it just kept growing and growing, this like small group of people, all from York University.
Volunteers, I'm guessing, for the most part, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We would provide some honorariums later on, but for the most part, all volunteer. So selling out, I remember getting that walkie, like being on the walkie and Nicole being like, there's 15 tickets left. I'm like, what? And because not everybody, it was like 6:30, it started at 7, people were still filing in. So we didn't know what it was. And then she's like, there's 5 tickets left. I'm like, 15. And then like 5. And then I was like, it was just a remarkable thing. And it's just a testament to what can happen when you truly manifest something. And looking back on that now, it's like, it's crazy because now, so like now we're so much larger than I would have ever imagined, because then going into 2019 we had, you know, just over like about 400 in that theater, and then we had about 500 at the after party come out because people who didn't attend the screenings also just came in the after party. And then, you know, we're on a rise, and then COVID happened. And so then it's kind of like, how much longer do we really want to keep doing this? Like, how much longer can we really sustain something that is a good idea, and it's helped so many filmmakers? And we were able even to get, for those who don't know, like a DCP is something like, it's a very high quality. It's what every film, I think they're starting to phase it out now, but it's what every film delivered to a theater is delivered in. It's a DCP. And so we finally got that.
It's kind of like a burrito wrapper for your film.
Exactly.
It just makes it more delicious. And I don't know, man. What? Yeah,
no,
DCP
that's great.
but a DCP is it about it's not a file format. You're just talking about the delivery mechanism.
The delivery, yeah. Because, well, what happened was in previous years,
it's like a fancy thumb drive.
A very fancy thumb drive.
Okay.
Very expensive thumb drive.
That allows for large files.
For large files, and it's a high quality, precise, film screening. So previous years we had films play off of an HDMI, off of a laptop in Cineplex's projection room, right? 2019 we had a DCP for the very first time. You look at the screen, you're like, holy shit, like it's, you know, and so the quality just increased. And but anyway, so where I'm getting with this is like, there were a few times, as anybody with a startup or with an organization has, where it's like, you know, you start to weigh out your options, and it's like, should we keep doing this? Should we not keep doing this? And we seriously considered closing in 2019, and then seriously considered it again when COVID happened, because we're a small festival, and we need these resources to survive. But then in 2020, in March of 2020, the same week that Cineplex locked our dates, they also canceled our dates. But then a few months after that, CBC Gem picked us up.
And that was just like they cold called you, or
they didn't. Well, so we started pitching to a few networks, but I thought of CBC because CBC has attended our festival in the past. They've sent representatives, and you know, they've acquired some films that we've programmed. So I'm like, you like the programming of the festival, you like the content. Come out and join the festival and partner with us. So we were the second film festival in Canada to partner with a national broadcaster to bring a festival to life. So we ended up partnering with them in August 2020, again in July 2021. And so we increased both the network and the capacity of the festival, the network to across Canada, and capacity from a 1-day festival to a 2-week festival, where
all the content was available on the Gem app, which is free in Canada, CBC app,
free with ads. So you could pay like $5 a month to get it without ads, and then and then it's free. You get like an ad before, like a Lexus ad before.
Shout out to Lexus.
Shout out to Lexus. Yeah,
Eric wants a car. I love it. I pay for the app. And I get all the working moms I want to watch. It's great. And it's great. Yeah, for Canadians, I mean, that's pretty cool, because you're right. It's about ubiquity, and it's this kind of like even though, you say you're paying for the app, it feels like a non-commercial platform to be on in Canada for Canadians.
Well, it's an organization that specifically highlights Canadian content, and that's what we're about, right? Is our festival up until now has been distinctly. And we ended up adjusting. So it used to be 30 and younger, now it's 40 younger. But our festival is distinctly Canadian filmmakers and short films by Canadian filmmakers. We have a bit of a surprise this year. We'll be adjusting that a little bit, but it's all in favor of Canadian filmmakers and how we could also grow the festival. And so, now we're gearing up in 2022. We are gearing up for a hybrid in-person and virtual festivals. So we did in person for 6 years, virtual for 2 years. Now we're meshing that together. We have a team of just over 30 people.
Wow, it's grown.
We have an advisory board now, and sponsors, and including our partnership with StartWell is just so incredible, because partnerships like these.
You're speechless.
Well,
I love that.
Partnerships like these are so integral to small businesses and organizations in which people are giving their all to, you
Right.
know. And every day we come in and we do the work, and we're working with people that are consistently delivering and just trying new ideas. You know, and it would be stupid not to continue.
And so for our listeners, I think let's just explain a little bit about that context, you know, for how we kind of got to meet each other and what our initial dialogue was. It's like, from my memory, from what I recall, you know, FoFs was looking for a little bit of a home base. Toronto was slow. For anyone outside of Canada and outside of Ontario, Toronto was pretty slow coming out of the pandemic, getting over the fear factor. We're still obviously dealing with it all over the world, but this post-pandemic reality and trying to rethink events and think about hybrid formats and stuff. Here on campus, we had been awake for some time, and people were trickling back into our doors for coworking and meetings and events and all the other studio productions, all the stuff that we were doing. So Eric reached out and said, hey, we would love to work together to have a place to work and bring our team together so that we can actually kind of, you know, work with each other.
And feel like a community again.
Right. And because ultimately, I mean, it's leading up to a couple months out, the event happening in person. And also, yes, again, through the GEM app.
So what'll happen is we'll have in-person events and stuff still at Scotiabank, and then on CBC GEM virtually. The films will be on CBC GEM.
And we're talking about doing the closing events
and then the closing,
here, right?
Yeah. So so I'm not sure how much I can reveal yet. But
you're the CEO, man. You make the decisions.
I make the law. I lay down the law. So in person events at, of course, StartWell Studios as well as Scotiabank, and then sort of coupling that amongst the 10 days with virtual screenings of just the films on CBC GEM.
Right.
So people will so there's a little bit of a festival map happening here, because we have a few different locations now, and like even ACTRA, like we're having a casting panel and workshop that we're bringing back, and we're going to have that with ACTRA Toronto. And so like we have a few different locations now, and again, like each partnership that we have, and every, you know, like I don't even want to consider it a sponsorship. I always consider it a partnership, because we always want to make sure that whomever we're working with, it's mutually beneficial, and we're bringing our audiences together. That's what we did. You know, Cineplex wanted to get young people back in the seats of movie theaters. They understand that there is a slow decline of this next generation going to the cinema to watch things rather than torrenting it or streaming it, right? So bringing both of our resources together, their space, our audiences combined, you know, bringing more Canadian content to CBC GEM, you know, making more people aware of this beautiful co-working space that you have here in this community.
Thank you.
That you're building. And so what I remember from our conversation, and this is something that no other person I've really spoken to has, is like, you're like, you know, we brought out a deck and all this stuff. You're like, forget the deck, forget the sponsor. Just who are you?
Right.
And what do you need? And how could we sort of make this work? And I was like, this guy's in. Like this guy. No, but like seriously, like you understood from the get-go. You're like, you know, these guys have something at the start. They have something to show. Yeah. You know, let's remove all the verbiage and all that, and let's just talk strategy and talk about how this could work for us.
Yeah. It's part of the ethos of the company, my company.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in the startup bent, and a lot of our audience are from that community, or entrepreneurs and tech startups particularly. You know, I'm always saying to people that there's this kind of like problem. I think it's a North American problem particularly, but we get into this like packaging mode. Everything needs to be packaged really well to be understood. And then, I mean, it goes also to your point about the cinemas having a tough time, you know, filling seats. A lot of it is this kind of like synonymity people feel like, because of the way it's marketed, that experiences are translatable. Like a film can be watched on your phone. Well, yeah, it can, but it's not the same experience.
What it is like
a screening.
And obviously there are so many different versions in which you can see a film. I think recently Avatar 2, it's like they're announcing like, I think 8 or 10 different ways you could watch the movie in 24 frames 2D, 24 frames 3D, 48 frames. It's just like, you know, so the plethora of options that people have now to watch films is enormous. Sure, fine. but you don't get that sense of community and that sense of that cathartic feeling and emotional resonance of like, you know, experiencing something with a group of people, that collective viewing experience. And what if we did that for short films that might not otherwise be seen, if not on the national scale we're providing them. And it's StartWell that's helping engage those communities, right? And we haven't even really begun, because it's only May, and we still have another month and a half until the event. We haven't even, you know, brought out the full team here yet. Like, we're still, you know, settling in and getting going. But that excites me. Like, I remember, you know, last year I was working with new people, some of whom I still have not met. Okay. That only, let's say, worked for the 2021 festival. You know, and some who, like, you know, still aren't working with us this year, but it's sort of like, I can't wait to meet you. You know, like, our accessibility director works in Ottawa. I can't wait to meet her finally, right? And, you know, she'll be traveling to Toronto for the festival. But aside from that, you know, our admin team, we had not met in person for 7 months, you know, just working virtually, then meeting in person. I felt like I was meeting celebrities. Right. So I was like, oh my God, like, you just been in, you know, and I think that's so interesting. Like, just moving aside from the festival and StartWell for a second, it's just like, in general, like, the way we've been communicating over the last 2 years and just virtual, some of it, like, you know, we don't really know what the person looks like in person, in the flesh, just being there. Well,
I mean, this is the weird thing, right? This is the weird thing about packaging. I call it that. I mean, it could be 5 million different descriptors that you could use, but the idea that, like, when you have a linear narrative to something, you know, like a way to interface with a person, content, whatever it is, and you rely on the means of communication, you rely on that method of communication, because it's like, it's owned, it's in your hands, it's digital, it's on or off, you know, you feel like relationships become on demand, all that stuff. There's so much stripped out of the experience, and so it's a really interesting thing to come out of this pandemic, start living through the next few months of bringing people together in person to produce an in-person event. And then hopefully something, you know, that we can collaborate on post-event, of course, is this idea of also community making amongst the filmmaker community. Of course, we're in Toronto, so we'll be talking about people here that make films and how they can create a peer group, because it's interesting. I mean, like, what is your experience talking to filmmakers that show at the festival about that kind of feeling of showing to their peers, you know, like everyone presenting is presenting for the first time, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, what we found as the festival has grown is we're gathering more and more films from filmmakers who have not shown the films anywhere. So, like, in the past, you know, obviously people are still getting to know us and still getting to know the festival. We weren't necessarily, you know, the premier destination for short films 4 years ago. This year, the program is almost entirely comprised of films that people in Toronto, at the very least, have not seen yet, which is incredible. And some of them even world premieres, like no other, because normally, you know, people go through like the Tier A festivals, the Sundances, the TIFFs, the you know, the Fantasias and all that. Then they sort of make their way down. But as a short film, people are starting to look at us and say, oh, well, I want to premiere there first.
I think it's really interesting. I think the time that we're in now for short films is fascinating because people's attention spans are short. You know, the point. Idea that, like, what do people call them in the industry? I think like if in the content industry, it's like digestibles or something.
Oh yeah.
You know, like
10-second, 30-second, like digestible content or something. People that can just, you know, scroll. Because if you think about it, like, you know, I was in a theater. I can't remember the movie now, and we were watching, the credits were rolling up, and everybody was, it was a Marvel movie. It wasn't Spider-Man. It was Eternals. I think it was Eternals. Movie doesn't matter. But I was everybody was still seated for the credits because of the end credits scene, and there was a guy in front of me that, you know, wasn't watching the credits, just on Instagram, and all he was doing just swipe, not watching anything. It's almost like they just, like, this person just needs the dopamine of flashy videos and photography just vomiting at their face, you know? So if somebody's doing that, like, and you could think like, you know, how many of us, you know, have tried posting an Instagram photo on our story, like, oh, wait, that is be right. Like, hold on, let me retake that. Hold on. Like, can we do this?
A lot of
people
work
are just
goes on,
scrolling.
Yeah,
People are scrolling. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It's this kind of like discommiserate. Wait, what would be the word? Discommiserate? Is that an actual word? Non-commiserate?
I've never heard of that word.
The idea of, I mean, like, there's basically a false match there between this kind of like the audience reaction,
right,
and the engagement with the content. Like, they're getting kind of more than what they engage with.
Okay.
Is the idea. Anyway, aside from critiquing social media, I think it's kind of like whether it's become habitual for some people or otherwise it's about busier day schedules and people hustling and bustling, or when you work exclusively online, as has happened for the first time for a lot of remote workers now.
Right.
You know, people trying to squeeze things in here and there, a little bit of like entertainment while I'm eating my lunch before I get back on this call, whatever it is. I think people are, they're primed for this kind of short format.
Well, what was interesting is that, like, even it's like tracking back to FoFs for a second, it's like when we were building these virtual festivals, I felt like it was like we were starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that we've done before in previous years mattered anymore. It was, how could we get people to watch virtually? The virtual platform, entirely new territory.
Right.
And we had some people leave. Like, we had, you know, hey, this isn't what I really signed up for, you know.
In terms of the production team.
In terms of, I mean, like, just some marketing, and especially because we were pushing the festival now in 2020 from May to August, people could not just extend contracts for another, you know, 3, 4, 5 months. Like, they couldn't, like, they didn't have the capacity for that, which is completely understandable. But we were starting from scratch, right? And so I keep bringing it back to this collective experience, because it's like, even the guy just, you know, scrolling and swiping through on his Instagram stories. Imagine having a room where, like a cinema, where people had to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you don't have to do anything.
You can get up and leave, but you'll trip over 7 people, and you kind of don't want to do that, and you'll just wait till
the end. At the IMAX at Scotia, you're sitting in the middle, you're fucked. Yeah. So, you know, having people just sit there and sit in an uncomfortable scene, sit in something comedic, you know, and everybody's watching, all eyeballs are there. But we do that with short films. We do that with Canadian short films about weird topics, short films about hilarious topics. And I'm just so excited to get back to that again.
Oh yeah. No, I'm sure people who are watching this that have known the festival for a few years or otherwise are fans of short films will agree. I mean, I think particularly short films are always amazing to share with someone. You know, they're typically, they have to pack a punch, you know, whether it's a little twist, a little surprise, some sort of emotional response.
There has to be a hook.
Yeah, there has to be a hook, and it's always something nice to share with someone else, for sure. Whereas a long form thing has 5 or 100 hooks, and, you know, it's really just about kind of keeping your eyes glued to the screen as well in some way.
Yeah.
Something I didn't ask you, which might be a nice kind of like tie together for the conversation, is your festival is called the Future of Festivals Showcase. So what do you think the future of future of film showcase?
Film showcase, yeah.
What is the future of film? Like, what what insights do you have into what that is?
Well, I think, like, you know, a big thing for us is, even in you know, in designing our program and designing the festival as a whole, it's almost like we hold ourselves accountable to what we feel the future of film looks like, and in this case, the future of Canadian film looks like. And we're getting that, and we're running with it, and we really hold ourselves true to that. So, you know, the future of
is it just about young filmmakers, or is it about emerging production technique and thematic content?
Well, we're expanding through our industry programming, including workshops we'll hold at StartWell, where it's like, how can we, there are an influx of festivals in Toronto. There are several festivals, a lot of which are doing very similar things. How do we stand out? What are we doing that people are grasp onto? And what our sort of mission there is, supporting films, emerging Canadian filmmakers, that's fine. But our industry program and our professional development opportunities, what are we doing through those opportunities that actually have people learning and growing and teaching them more about things like the business of film and television and how to market your films, and like through our casting workshops and our panels, like what is it about acting, or what is it that Canadian casting directors, I should say, are looking for in an audition or in a self-tape or whatnot. And that's what we're trying to do here is, we're trying to build these opportunities for our audiences and for our filmmakers that sort of like, can come together collectively and learn something. You're not just going to FoFs, and speaking on FoFs in particular, you're not just attending FoFs and like hoping to, you see the screenings, okay, let's just go home. Like I've been to festivals that I've screened at sometimes where, you walk in, there's like a communal sushi platter on the table, you screen your film and you go home.
Right.
There's no use in that for me. Right. It's sometimes it's not even always about the films. It's really like, what could filmmakers who aren't even screening at our festival, we only accept, like, we have a very short window, and like, we're looking at expanding that over time. But we can only really accept between like 12 to 14, 15 films, right? And out of the hundreds that are being submitted to us, there are a lot of filmmakers whose work doesn't get in. What are they getting out of this experience now? Why should they attend our festival if their film's not being screened? That's why, our professional development opportunities, our industry programming that is constantly evolving and like actively engaging with people and their their abilities to learn, essentially.
I think, having experienced the Cannes Film Festival myself, I think like that aspect of a kind of not just like a buyer's market or that kind of like retail side of the industry, who's going to buy the film after it's screened, who's going to pick it up quickly. That aspect is entirely different than the community aspect of filmmakers getting together and celebrating film together. And filmmaking and getting to know each other, and like,
but I think you need to integrate that a little bit though, right? Because I think, like, I went to York University, I mentioned before, for film production for 4 years. We didn't get, in my opinion, a great deal of knowledge on the business of film and television, how to market your film, how to make that step from shorts to features, how to make this work sustainable. Film is not sustainable. Like, I mean, it can be, for sure, but when you're starting out and everything and you're learning how to make them, that's all great. And I remember, being like a second-year student and being very excited about this entire world of creation, but at the same time, it's like, how are you actually forging a path, a career path? How are you actually making something of yourself? And so I think it's important to integrate that business aspect and that marketing aspect with the creative and the fun and the collective experience and all that.
And a lot of that content will come from knowledge sharing, and comes from that kind of peer mentorship that is like great, when it happens spontaneously, but also great when it happens in a format that enables people to engage. Like, it's okay to watch a YouTube video and post in the comments, but if you're at a festival and a discussion panel and you can go up to the people who are talking
in person
after and ask them more questions and build your network, because now you have friends that you can ask these things to because you exchanged emails, is great. So it's quite exciting that you guys are pursuing this and growing the programming element of the festival outside of just screenings.
Of course.
It's super exciting.
Thank you. And even as a filmmaker, because I'm a director and a producer myself, and a lot of what I wrestled with when I was younger is like, and some great advice that I've gotten in the past is like, it's important to show up. It's, it's important, like, to take that lunch or to take that coffee, and sometimes you may not want to get out of bed in the morning, and like I resonate with that. Like, believe me, I do, but I think there is a value to getting up and making that first step and actually, going to that festival, even if you just go and just sit, just sit down. You don't have to go to any parties or whatever, but like try to get there, because that's what's going to make yourself known. You know what I mean? Like, sitting in front of a computer all day, it's not gonna get you there. Like, film is a business of relationships. It's a business of relationships between people. If you're not meeting new people and actively trying to, forge new connections, I don't know if it's going to work out in the way that it would if you did do that. And that's why, Whistler, like, even for Whistler, like, that coming up for me personally, it was just like, a really weird time because, you know, we were going into lockdown again soon. And I don't know if I had really had the funds to make it to that festival, but, you know, I ended up going. I ended up meeting, reuniting with that guy that at the bar in our first year of FoFs. We were at a party and he comes up to me and he's like, hey. I'm like, hey. He's like, you know me. I'm like, do I? And he's like, I'm that guy. I was sitting at the bar. I was looking at you. You're 18 years old, drinking this beer in this bar. Like, what are you doing? You got to keep going, and you got to keep doing this. And it was very an emotional moment. And I ended up meeting another director. His name's Kashif, and I ended up producing his film in Toronto in April. But that being said, it's like, had I not gone to that festival, I would not have reunited with this guy. And he really just like reignited that spark, reignited that spark in the festival. And that's what I love about emerging creators and people coming up is like, you know, there's this understanding that, you know, there is light above, you know, there is a light beyond the horizon, and, you know, you can sort of, you know, pull through and continue. And if I've learned anything from doing this festival, it's that in itself, right? You know, we were thinking of shutting down a few times, and it was like, but we just kept going. And that being said, it's not just easy to say we just kept going, because a lot of people have put like countless hours into this thing, and often for free. And I guess, like, you know, me sort of being in a way like the face of this thing and everything, there are so many people behind me that work on this thing. Like, it's incredible. And any success that I've ever had personally and professionally, but also with this festival, has been on the backs of people that have worked for us and then have done it, you know?
Any final notes for people that would want to, as they've heard this conversation or watched it, get involved with the festival, and any particular, you know, types of contribution that you guys are always looking for, or otherwise for next year that you've got your eyes open for? Yeah.
So I guess by the time this is released, we'll have just put out our call for volunteers for the festival. So every year, when we were in person, we put out a call for volunteers, and you could work on the ground in theater. You could be at any of our after party venue or any of our sort of industry areas. So you can go to FoFs.ca, or you could follow us at Future Film Show on socials. So we're putting out a call for volunteers there. Submissions for the festival usually open in the fall. So you can keep in touch with our socials and FoFs.ca for all of that information. And then the festival itself will be launching in mid-June. So just stay tuned for that.
Cool. I want to end by asking you if there are any particular lessons you would tell yourself, or tips that you'd give yourself looking back at that 18-year-old Eric getting this thing going, now 8 years on. Yeah. That might be useful to people that like kind of like not just producers or directors, people that want to work in the industry, but you know, anyone kind of undertaking some sort of creative project and thinking of it not as something that has legs, or it was just fun for a moment. What would you say to yourself, 18-year-old Eric?
I'd say take it easy. That's what I'd say. I think when I was younger, I put a lot of pressure on specific moments, specific people, specific sort of events that I needed to have happen. And so, you know, if we had a certain sponsor that couldn't support us, or we had a person I wanted to work with who couldn't be on the team, like, you know, a lot of I would sort of not even blame myself, but I would really, like, you know, there'd be a lot of stress surrounding those things. And if there was any advice that I'd really give myself, is really just to take it day by day and be appreciative for the present, be appreciative for who's here now. Because at the end of the day, anything we've ever done are from people who have been present with the festival in that time. You know, and it's all a journey.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? As you get older, you realize is like life can be as busy as you want it to be. But then you never take time to kind of like enjoy the process as well, right?
Enjoy the process, enjoy the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And on that note, this moment's over. No. I mean, I know you've got something to get to, but it was fantastic taking time to chat.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me on the StartWell podcast.
Of course.
And as things progress with the festival, maybe we'll do a vlog, with you guys planning and leading up to the event or something.
Yeah, that'd be
cool, right?
That'd be fantastic.
So stay tuned for anyone interested in the journey of producing the 2022 FoFs. And if you want any information on starting your own festival in your own country, in your own region, anything like that, Eric already dropped those links that you can...
FoFs.ca.
There you go. And, of course, get in touch with StartWell through the website, and we'll bounce messages over to these guys as you need them done. All right?
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you.